Hello YouTube, this is Jesse Ferguson, Canadian singer-songwriter and folk musician here on YouTube and abroad. And today I'd like to bring to you a video in my series on beginner guitar theory, beginner guitar practice actually, how to play guitar in other words. So today the subject is on bar chords and how to use them, little tricks that I've learned over the years on how to do them well. So I'm not an expert guitar player. I'm more of a singer actually, but in order to accompany myself I obviously play guitar, and bar chords feature in many songs that I play, even within folk music, which tends to be fairly easy to play, 3 chords, etc. But every once in a while you end up having to do bar chords, especially if you want to play something that's a bit more complex than just 3 chords. So it's eventually, if you want to progress as a guitarist, you will have to deal with the bar chord at some point. So what is a bar chord? Well, basically it's any kind of chord where instead of playing the strings individually, fretting the strings, and I'm going to zoom in right up on this. So fretting the strings is the technical term for holding down one note, to press the string down, cause it to touch the fret wire, and cause a note to sound. So if you play the low E string open, and then you play up here, you get the various notes in the chromatic scale. So that's fretting a note. Now in a bar chord, a simple chord, you would just fret individual strings. So this is A minor, fretting individual strings. Now if I take that same formation of A minor, I'll try to keep this in frame, and slide that up the neck, then I get B minor. And this is the bar chord portion that we're talking about. So A minor, B minor, and C minor, all the way up, etc., etc. So in other words, you're taking, this is a simple chord, bar chord. And this is the part that's tricky to do. At least it was for me in the beginning, to get that all to clamp down essentially the exact same procedure that you achieve, or the same effect you achieve with a capo, a guitarist capo. So I clamp this on and play the same A minor chord, and I get B minor. So the capo allows you to quickly transpose or change keys up and down. So if you want to play this song in A minor, you play it down here. But if all of a sudden you want to sing it in a higher key, you want to modulate the song, in other words move it up to a higher key so that you can perhaps sing in a more easy register for your voice. Say for instance, if this is appropriate for a male voice, maybe this might be more appropriate, this key, for a female voice potentially, or whatever your range happens to be. So a capo allows you to do that without the hazards to your finger that having to bar it would do. But nevertheless, in some songs, for instance if you're playing a song in the key of D, and you want the related minor, well it happens to be B minor. And so bar chords feature largely in a lot of different styles of music, including folk music, even things as simple as you know, Celtic folk music, country music, and so on. As we said, if you want to progress as a guitarist, you need to be able to deal with it at some point. So how do you actually do it? Well, if you're going to be playing this in a song progression, you don't generally want to have to think about doing this first and then putting them on. But as you're learning how to do a bar chord, you might want to do that. So the simplest style, and is often used in say rock music and punk rock music, is to do a simple bar like this, and really what you're strumming is only the first 3 notes. So the bass note here would be on the A string, whatever position that is. I'm playing a D. Now if I was going to do a full bar chord to sound it all D major, I would actually have to put that finger on. But you can cheat and play it just like that, and you basically don't pick the lower strings. So if I was doing say a punk rock song, now in this case I'm actually sort of cheating and not strumming the lower strings down here. So it makes it a bit easier. So in other words, you only have to focus really on playing the strings with your fingertips, really. You could play those punk rock style bar chords, technically cheating by not sounding the bottom strings. And in some cases you want that effect for a suspended string, a suspended chord, which can sound pretty. But for proper bar chord playing, you should at least in theory be able to play barring the whole thing. So here is G major as a bar chord, same thing as this. That's one thing I didn't mention, is that bar chords generally are equivalent to simpler chord phrasings, I guess, or configurations. So this is G major, same chord played in the bar chord. You hear the same thing. So a lot of the time you can get away without playing bar chords, which are generally more tiring on your wrist, I find, in your hand. So if you can get away without doing the bar chord, in many cases you should do that, just to save your wrist power and so on, and your hand power. Unless you have, really strong wrists and really strong hands that will never get fatigue through here. That's one of the problems with bar chords, is getting cramps and fatigue through here. I've actually had it where, in some cases, I've actually been sore for days from playing too much bar chords on here, or that after playing for a few hours, say performing out in a gig, that I can't play any more of those bar chord songs. So it is something that you have to develop your wrist strength and your also to develop some toughness on your finger. You'll almost always be barring with your pointer finger. So you're going to end up with some wear and tear on here, just like you do with your fingertips in standard playing. You get calluses on the end, but eventually I don't think you'll end up with calluses all the way through, but you will have to toughen that flesh up a little bit. Otherwise it'll just be shredded. So gradually you should work up to that. Don't try to play songs with bar chords for an hour straight the first time you learn it, because you'll end up severely cramped through here and very sore through here for the most part. So throw it into your practicing, maybe 1 or 2 songs that involve bar chords, and then work your way up, just like any other skill that involves manual dexterity. You don't want to overdo it at first. So how do you do it? Well, for now, one thing you should try to do is try to do a G major chord. Put your finger on there, and see, to bar it all the way, I can do it because I have a lot of practice. But I'm going to show you close up how to do it, and then you add your other 3 fingers. So the same configuration as an E major up above. Let's see if I can get this in frame. An E major. So if you know how to make an E major, then you should try that now. And then, but make it with these 3 fingers, your pinky, your ring, and your middle. And then slide it up here, and you've got a G major. Now notice how my pointer finger is extending above the neck. To me, that's the only way I can do it. If I try to slide that down, I lose a lot of power. But the other consideration, and you might try this now and not get the high E, the B, and the G to ring properly. You might say, well, mine's buzzing, or I'm not getting anything at all. I'm muting the string because I'm not pressing hard enough. Well, here are some considerations for your stance and the way you hold the instrument. First of all, if I stand back a little bit, you'll see that my guitar is on a strap, and that it's not down at my knees like some of the punk rock and rock musicians like to have it, but it's up high enough. And the reason for that is that I want to have a comfortable angle in my wrist, so that it's not bent like that. I don't know how some of those punk rock guys do it. I suspect that's why their musicianship is often very sloppy, because to play down here is not conducive to good playing. So my first point is to bring it up so that your wrist is in comfortable, almost a 90 degree to your elbow. And you'll see the way my wrist is positioned up a little bit, but the elbow is basically at 90 degrees. I'm standing up straight. If I'm sitting down, I'm doing the same thing basically. It's still up there. So basically you want the fretboard almost around where your heart is. at least where you're going to be doing most of your playing, up down here at the end of the neck. At least for simple music, that's where I do 90% of my playing is down here. So if you're doing the bar chords, you don't want to have your neck all the way down there or way up high or something like that. Although the classical musicians, the classical guitarists do in fact hold it that way, and that creates a great angle for ease of playing up and down the neck. So really, if you wanted to do your best playing, that's probably the way you should do it, but it's difficult on stage in, say, an informal rock kind of concert configuration, and it looks a little bit unusual perhaps to most people. But really, that's the best way to play. If you want to do maximum ease on your wrist and maximum dexterity. So you don't have to hold the guitar up, your hand is free to float around over here. But at any rate, if you're going to do it in a more conventional style for most people, or more usual style, it's going to be down here somewhere. So keep it at a comfortable angle for you, but I would recommend keeping that elbow at 90 degrees. And also, in terms of holding the guitar, you don't want it to be back here on your body. You want it generally to be out in front, and I find with bar chords I really want to push the guitar out really in front so that I can get an angle to the neck that's more like this. My arm is reaching forward on the neck, creating a tight angle here between my arm and the neck of the guitar. That allows me to clamp and turn my finger not at 90 degrees to the fretboard like this, but well, I don't know exactly what the angle would be, maybe 45. More strength comes from turning your hand that way to do a bar chord, at least for me. So I would highly recommend you try that. And I also don't keep my finger rigidly straight like that. I put a little curve to it right up at the fret wire. So let's zoom in on that, what I mean there. It's not in the middle or at the back of the fret, so that's the back, that's the middle. I keep it right at the front, right on that fret wire. This is the fret wire, the piece of wire that's in your neck. So it's right at the front, turned, and slightly hooked. And if you don't press these ones down in the middle of the series as firmly as the tops and the bottoms, that's all right, because your other fingers are there doing the other strings. So here in close-up is what that G major looks like. And you'll notice that my finger is down, curved, and extending beyond the neck a little bit. And I'll see if I can note that properly. So I'm getting a little bit of muting there on the low E. Now this is an unusual posture, but so let's look at that from the back. From the end, I guess. And I guess, well, just to be complete, look at it from this angle too. B minor. Actually, that's B, or C flat minor, I guess. G major, and that's the B minor. So that's what works for me. So again, it's gonna take some time for you to develop the strength in your wrist and the strength in your finger. Your forearm muscles will get tired. So it's a great idea before and after you learn how to do bar chords is to stretch out your fingers. I often do it against the edge of a desk, my desk or something like that, and I'll stretch them out, stretch out this way. Even right now I'm getting a bit cramped. So I mean, I've been playing guitar for 13, 15 years, something like that, and it still gives me trouble sometimes. Another thing you can try is getting one of those hand strengtheners or a tennis ball or something like that and just squeeze it. If you have a desk job or something like that, bring it to your desk and squeeze every once in a while. Again, don't overdo it, and you'll just develop that strength through here. You're basically turning your hand into a clamp to clamp down those strings. Now, if you do something like finger picking, you really can't fudge it, because if you have a dead note, it's going to ring out loudly. So, for instance, this is the progression for the the Beatles song, Because. So if I'm playing each note, then you really can't afford to have any buzzing, fret buzzing, and so on. So if you're just strumming the chords, you can get away with a little bit more. But anywho, that's the same idea. The principle is that eventually, once your skill develops, you'll find out the configuration that exactly works for you so that you don't have as much wrist fatigue and that you sound the notes all clearly. You fret every single note individually, clearly. So that's what you should aspire to, and to not have so much fatigue when you're done, so that you can play a whole set of an hour or so without taking a break. Now, in some cases, if my hand gets really tired, or I figure out that a certain song might call for a different phrasing of the same chord, sometimes you can cheat. So if you play your G major, sometimes what I'll do is bounce this finger down and put the thumb on, and technically you achieve a very similar chord. Well, if you don't ring the high E, if you don't pluck the high E, if you just pluck that, it sounds exactly the same as that. So in other words, rather than barring, I'm putting these two fingers on. So that's one option if you really get wrist fatigue, or sometimes if you want a suspended chord sound. Now, so those are your considerations for the bar chord. Now you take that, you take this, say, A major, and you bounce the exact same configuration down, you get B minor. So the same configuration up here is just like when you play your A major, your E major, sorry, and you bounce that down here, you get A minor. So it becomes the minor because of the way the series is set up on the guitar, the intervals and so on. But the configuration works the same. So if you want to do a D major, you have to add that finger on. So it becomes like your A major down here. All three fingers in the second fret. A bit trickier to play, I think, in terms of not getting any buzzing. To crowd all three fingers in there, that is. But so one last time, I'll just show how I do it. And the trick is to not have to practice it enough, just like any other chords that you play on the guitar, to practice them enough so that whenever you're playing a song, you don't have to say, oh yeah, C major looks like this, 1, 2, 3, like beginner guitars, so you don't have to feel bad about it, and it's a skill like any other. It takes a lot of practice. Persist with it though, but if you're playing something in D, you don't want to have to think, oh yeah, a bar chord means I put the finger there and then get all this buzzing and stuff like that. I mean, ideally you want to be able to move as quickly to a bar chord as you do to any other chord, the simple chords down at the end of the neck. So it will come with time. Some people will have greater ease with it than others, obviously, because of strong hands. I think thin fingers in some aspects of playing guitar are an advantage, whereas with bar chords I think they may be a disadvantage. So again, not straight on, a little to the side, turn that elbow in, and put the guitar out if you have to. But turn that elbow in, not at an awkward angle down here, but straight 90 degrees the elbow. And the more you turn it, I find the easier it becomes. So here again is that G major that we practiced. So the more of an angle I put my hand at and my wrist, to me the easier it is to bar that. Even without the fingers on. So you can get different phrasings. You have your major, your minor. Somehow, whenever I do the minor, I generally bounce that other middle finger on top of the ring finger, the pointer finger, sorry. So just extra strength to push that down really hard. So that's one option too. Otherwise, you'll see some people put the middle finger up, which might be, you know, it could send a different signal than you intended. But yeah, generally whenever I'm playing the chords like that, the cheater ones, I'll bounce that finger on top of the pointer. So those are my tricks for better playing of bar chords. As I said, it's very hard to play any kind of technical songs without them. Eventually you will have to deal with them. Not that they're, you know, they greatly expand your possibilities for different kinds of songs. So they're definitely something you want to put the effort into mastering. If all you know are chords down here at the end of the neck, that's really something you should try, is just get that bar chord. And eventually you can play things all the way up the neck and so on. So if I want to play G, C, D, I can do it all with chords as well, bar chords. And if you're playing an electric guitar, it becomes a lot easier because the action generally on an electric guitar is much lighter than it is on an acoustic. My action is actually quite stiff on this new guitar. I've only had it for about 6 months. I'm thinking about lowering it, but I like the sound that I'm getting now, so I've just got to teach myself again to toughen that hand up. Make it tough and yet still able to do the, you know, the finer bits of playing. And it will come with time. Practice, 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 right? Don't get discouraged right off the bat. And there are lots of other videos on YouTube you can consult on bar chords, how to do them. Maybe someone will explain it to you in a way that makes a bit more sense. But you want to, I mean, there's no way around it. You're going to be putting substantial strain on this hand, like a clamp. And what you want to do is find the configuration of that clamp that doesn't tire you out so much. And you could potentially even do long-term damage if you do it incorrectly your whole life. Or for a substantial period of time. So you really want to take the time to find out what seems to work for you. If you have any problems with carpal tunnel or anything like that, maybe you'd want to consult your physiotherapist or something like that. Say, well, you know, bring in your guitar and show that person, you know, this is the way I hold it. Do you have any suggestions? For instance, I have problems with my rotator cuff up in my shoulder, so I was counseled by my physiotherapist to hold the guitar down and back to make an easier strumming position for myself, which also has the happy coincidence of putting the neck in the angle that's best for me to do bar chords. As I said, forward and up. So to put my shoulder in the proper position, I have to get in proper position for doing the bar chords, which is nice that it works that way. So anyway, good luck with your bar chord playing, and thanks for listening to my video. I hope you found it helpful. If you want to learn more about basic guitar skills and things like that, please check out my other videos. I do have a basic overview of how to play guitar that you might find useful, again for beginners. And I also have a lot of videos of my own songs and traditional folk music, so if you are interested in any of that, please check them out, and happy playing. Bye.